Chapter 2. Divine Occurrence. Turning Back. Friday, 10 a.m. Mac guided his Pete along the shoulder, leaning left in unison with the hitchhiker as the truck leaned right. The rig groaned in protest as he attempted to pull his truck back onto the highway. Third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. He popped it into high range and eased back onto the highway. The rig righted itself as the cargo shifted. Mac eased his vice-like grip from the wheel upon reaching highway speed once more. There was blessed silence in the cab now, save for the click, 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 click sound of the 80,000-pound tractor-trailer rolling over highway expansion joints. The hitchhiker slammed his door shut, crossed his arms, and stared dead ahead at the highway. Mac settled onto his seat, and emptied lungs filled from the deep breath he took before pulling the truck forward. Thank God. Did you do that on purpose? The hitchhiker cast ice-cold eyes Mac's way. After turning to stare into the young man's eyes for a moment, Mac returned his attention to the highway. What? Jerk the wheel around like that. The hitchhiker thrust his fist forward and mimicked his motions with the steering wheel. Make the truck rock back and forth. I'm not that crazy. Mac plopped an arm onto his armrest and inclined toward his passenger. Didn't you see that combine? Still glaring at Mac, the passenger blinked. That what? That farm machinery. The farm machinery we almost ran over back there. I didn't see no farm machinery. I was looking back at you. The last thing I remember, you was telling me how scary it was to haul swinging meat. The man jabbed an accusing finger in Mac's direction. Then you started driving crazy to prove it. Oh yeah, now I remember. Mac lifted an index finger and motioned it towards his passenger. You were saying, I ain't scared of no swinging meat. Then you tried to make me scared. Still pointing his finger, the hitchhiker gave it a firm shake. That wasn't no coincidence. Mac looked at the young man's finger, then back up at his spitting mad face. He shrugged and turned his gaze back to the highway. No, you're right. I don't believe in coincidences. He glanced at his passenger and smiled. I call things like that divine occurrences. Huh? The hitchhiker lowered his finger-pointing hand and gripped his armrest. What? Divine occurrences. You know, things people call coincidences, happenstance, stroke of luck, or bad luck, fate maybe. He turned and looked the hitchhiker dead in the eye. But those things happen by design. As his Pete lumbered along down the highway now, he enjoyed the rocking rhythm of the road for that moment in time. Facing the highway in silence, Mac smiled once more, this time to himself. He turned his gaze toward his mirror and watched his hometown fade away in the distance. He glanced at his passenger and nodded. It's a God thing. The hitchhiker turned to his window and watched the monotonous landscape pass by like a passenger on a train bound for nowhere. After sitting in silence for some time, he rolled his head to face Mac. You are crazy. Maybe, but like they say, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me. And what's that supposed to mean? I may be crazy, Mac said matter-of-factly, but that doesn't change the fact that God often uses events in our lives to get our attention. He just did that to you. Oh yeah? The hitchhiker scoffed. And just how'd he do that? Mac placed a hand atop his steering wheel and spread his fingers to make sure all the little red needles on the truck's gauges were pointed in the right direction. All systems go, he thought, using a phrase Uncle Jake used when Mac stood barefooted behind him, feeling the rumbling floor beneath his feet. Mac would lean over his uncle's shoulder, point to the gauges, and confirm the assessments. All systems go. What's your name, son? Mac turned to face his passenger and smiled. Ricky. My name is Ricky. People call me Rocky. Rocky. You don't look like a Rocky to me. Where'd you get that nickname? The hitchhiker tapped a finger to his head. Some dude in the joint said I had rocks for brains, so I got stuck with that name ever since. You know, Ricky, Rocky. I tried just to go by Rick after that, but they called me Rock, so I gave up. Uh-huh. Well, I think I'll call you Ricky if you don't mind. Mac extended a hand across the space separating the two men. I'm Robert. Robert McLean. People call me Mac. The hitchhiker wiped his palm on his jeans before shaking Mac's hand, but remained silent. Pleased to meet you. Still grasping the young man's hand, Mac inquired, How much time did you spend in prison, Ricky? 4 years? Yeah. The man withdrew his hand and shrugged. Something like that. I was supposed to anyways. They let me out early for good behavior. Ever been locked up before? The hitchhiker turned to his window and laughed. Everybody back there's at least been in county jail before. So you ignored the people and signs that told you what would happen when you violated the rules. Mac focused his eyes on his unresponsive passenger. Violating those rules got you into trouble before, but you didn't stop doing things you knew would get you in trouble. The hitchhiker shook his head. What's all this got to do with you driving crazy? I told you how unstable the load we're hauling is, but you were so cocky about the danger involved. Mac stretched out his shoulder strap and snapped it to his chest. You didn't even buckle your seatbelt until the truck almost flipped over. Well, now I know, man. You didn't have to almost kill us both to prove your point. Maybe, but sometimes it takes a dramatic event like that for God to get our attention. Things happen for a reason, Ricky. He may have used that little adventure we had to get the attention of both of us. Thank God for combines. He lifted an index finger from the wheel and pointed to an old, closed-down way station. I'm going to pull off here to get turned around and head back into town. I wasn't going to stop anywhere else in Pampa, but there's a truck stop I'd like to visit that I haven't been to in years. I don't plan on coming back here anytime soon if I don't have to, so it may be the last chance I get for a very long time. Mac paused for a long moment before continuing. I think I might change my route anyway and go the way my uncle did when he was dodging scales back in the day. We'll have a cup at that old truck stop if it's still there and check out things before we hit the road again. I need to make sure we didn't lose anything back there, other than a year or two off our lives.